Smokeless Mainland. One evening, Thomas brought the last train to the station before the night run. The fat controller stood on the platform. Thomas, he said, I'm here to tell you that in a few days we will have to go to the other railway to help in the upgrading of the furnace railway, the one where Edward worked. Because Barrow stations, diesel shunters are at the works for an inspection, and the manager of the other railway asked me for an engine that could work in the yards. Yes, sir, replied Thomas. I'd love to. That's a good engine, smiled the fat controller. Now go and get ready for your night train. Soon it was time for the night run. The guard blew his whistle and Thomas steamed off the station. During the journey, Thomas told Annie and Clarabelle about the news. I can't wait to go, he said. I have many friends who work on the other railway, and I can't wait to see them again. Oh, I don't know if you'll see them again, replied Clarabelle. It's true, continued Annie. I know the other railway is scrapping all their steam engines. Nonsense, replied Thomas. You know that many engines such as the Flying Scotsman, Ginty, and Pug still work on the mainland. The train continued its journey and finally reached the top station. While Thomas's driver worked with the controls in Clarabelle's cab to enable the push-pull system, Thomas thought back to what his coaches had said. All steam engines scrapped. Pah, impossible, he thought to himself, although he was worried that Annie and Clarabelle were right. At last, the day of the journey to the other railway arrived. Thomas was delighted, even though he was still thinking about what Annie and Clarabelle had said a few nights before. After he said goodbye to Percy and Toby and made sure that they would have taken care of his coaches, Thomas set off. After a long journey, Thomas arrived to the other railway late at night and was so tired that, when he went to the sheds, he immediately fell asleep without even looking around. The next day, Thomas woke up late. The driver and fireman had let him rest more after the long journey. All the other engines had already gone to work, and Thomas saw no one. Soon the little tank engine arrived to the yard. After he had shunted some trains, he heard the sound of wheels rattling. Hello, said Thomas. Who's there? Replied a threatening voice. I'm an engine from Sodor, replied Thomas. I'm here to work in the yard during the upgrading of the furnace railway. Oh, finally, said the voice. We really needed a new diesel to help us. A diesel? Asked Thomas, confused. What do you mean? As he was speaking, Thomas saw a red diesel engine beside him. What are you doing here, you old steam engine? Asked the diesel. What do you mean? Asked Thomas. I'm one of the many steam engines. There haven't been any steam engines here for years, said the diesel, except for a few lucky survivors. But that's not possible, exclaimed Thomas. I have many friends who live here. Who lived here, you mean, replied the diesel. What do you mean? Asked Thomas. I know many engines that work here. Ginty, Pug, the Flying Scotsman, and others. Are you sure you want to see where Ginty and Pug are? Asked the Diesel to Thomas. Of course, exclaimed Thomas. They are my friends. Very well then, the Diesel replied. Take that track over there. I'll do it right away, said Thomas, and he passed through the points. After a short time, Thomas arrived to a yard. He couldn't believe his eyes. There were many scrapped engines and 2 waiting to be scrapped, Ginty and Pug. Ginty! Pug! Exclaimed Thomas. The 2 engines that were sleeping woke up immediately. Nice to see you again, Thomas, said Ginty. True, continued Pug. What brings you here, Thomas? I'm here to work at the big yard, replied Thomas. What are you doing here, and why are you in that state? We are waiting for our end, said Ginty, as this is the fate of almost all the steam engines of British Railways, continued Pug. But that's not possible, exclaimed Thomas. It cannot be. Unfortunately, this is what happens to the steam engines of British Railways, said Pug. Now there are also electric locomotives, and we steam engines are considered useless by everyone, continued Ginty. Thomas didn't know what to say. I must go now, he said. I have to go to the big yard. The little blue tank engine was shocked. When he returned to the yard, he said nothing. The red Diesel laughed, even if he felt a little sorry for Thomas. This is the fate of all the steam engines, he said. Fortunately for him, the Flying Scotsman was bought by a private owner and occasionally works on this line. Almost all the other famous engines of British Railways have had the same luck. Thomas, however, didn't answer. He was feeling very sorry for what he had seen. Many scrapped steam engines, thinking about how lucky he was to work on the Fat Controller's Railway.